Do you have trouble talking about your feelings? You're not alone. It's a topic that can make even the most powerful people somewhat squeamish. You're listening to Feelings Matter, where our mission is to demystify everything about emotions so that we can all get more comfortable talking about them. Join Tina and Michelle every week as we unpack a new angle on emotions, drawing upon the science of the brain and the psychology of human nature.
I'm Michelle Stinson-Ross, and I am here with Tina Schweiger. You are listening to Feelings Matter.
Hey, it's good to see you guys again, or hear you.
So excited because there have been some amazing things going on. You have created and called the Net Emotional Index. So let's start with, what exactly is that, Tina?
The answer to that is, have you ever heard of the Net Promoter Score? The Net Promoter Score, we'll put a link to in the notes of the show, has been around since 2003, was launched by the Harvard Business Review, and the title of the article was The One Number You Need to Grow. At the time, 2003, if you're old enough to remember, there was no social media, really, to speak of. You could have a blog, you could publish some things, but we were just really entering the phase of Web 2.0, which meant that the internet could be interactive. At that time, companies very quickly realized that they'd have to have better behavior towards their customers, because if they didn't, their customers could now have a voice and get out there and tell everyone either, you got to go to this car wash. It was amazing. I had the best experience. My car is sparkling clean. Or they could say, you know what? Never go to that car wash. It was terrible. They didn't even clean my tires, or my windshield came back dirty. And consumers ended up with a lot more power than they'd ever had. And that really threw corporations for a loop, because they hadn't really ever had to consider their customers' feelings at that level. How they quantified this was, would a customer be willing to recommend the business? So we were talking about the car wash. How likely would you be to say to your friend, hey, go to this car wash. This car wash is awesome. If you gave that a 9 or a 10 out of 10, you'd be called a promoter. If you gave it a 7 or 8, you'd be called a passive. And if you gave it a 6 or less, they'd consider you a detractor, which means that you may not recommend it, but you also may kind of detract. You may speak negatively about the business. And businesses over the years have been tying their bottom lines to a Net Promoter Score and watching the trends. As the Net Promoter Score goes up and down, how does that impact their bottom line? And it's one of those KPIs that marketers all around the country are intimately familiar with, because a lot of them are somewhat obsessed with it still. So I'm going to pause there, because I feel like I just gave you a mouthful about the Net Promoter Score, but it's all in setup for the explanation of Net Emotional Index.
Hopefully that helps people kind of wrap their brain around the mechanism of what this is and go, oh yeah, I know what that is. That has to do with reputation management. A lot of things that we see, like stars and, hey, will you leave a review? All of that is tied back to how businesses collect and tabulate that Net Promoter Score.
So that's a very simple calculation, and I think why it's caught on and it's so successful, because you can really boil it down to one number. You take all the neutral responses out, just ignore them. You average all of the positive responses and you subtract all of the negatives. The resulting NPS is a number between 1 and 100. An airline may have a 25. That would be considered pretty low. Other companies may have a 75 or an 80, and that would be considered really high. And they're proud of it. So similarly with emotions, since we're tracking and bringing in data on an ongoing basis at Mindful Appy with emoji, we're able to distinguish which emojis are positive, which ones are neutral, and which ones are negative. So we're applying a similar metric where we're taking the positive scores, we're ignoring the neutral ones, and we're subtracting the negative ones. This score, the Net Emotional Index, it's net because it's the net score. It's like you've taken out and moved something aside, and this is what's left. It's emotional because that's what we're measuring. And it's an index because, like a stock market or something, every time you take the NEI, it will be a little bit different. Because as you know, everybody's emotions change on sometimes a moment to moment basis or a day to day basis or a split second.
So that leads to my next question. Why do workplaces need a net emotional index?
Much like the HBR launched with the one number you need to grow at the time, very, very true. I think the NEI is the one number you need to know. If you don't know it, you're in the dark. And how can you make any decisions? They need the NEI because the way that it's gathered and calculated is intended to be anonymous. When Mindful Appy calculates and analyzes NEI scores, all of the input is anonymized and aggregated. We talk a lot on this show about psychological safety and feeling like it's okay to say how you really feel. Well, so many workplaces may have a toxic work culture. They don't feel safe saying anything to, much less how they feel. Mm-hmm. So if we provide a platform that is truly anonymous and cannot be traced back anywhere to a single person, then people are more likely to just quickly maybe give the finger on over text if they're really unhappy, or the hands if they're really grateful, whatever it is that's in their favorites that they use all the time to express themselves with emoji, they can just really quickly report that. The benefit is that's a real thing. I mean, feelings matter. Like, they're a data point, and that is a real person's feeling at that time. It's their data point. We anonymize them and aggregate them, and then we calculate the NEI. We can get a score that's between negative 100 and positive 100. So it's a little bit wider than the range of the NPS. So the NEI, if you're negative on the NEI, your culture has a more negative than positive sentiment in general. If you call it the overall mood, the average mood is weighted towards the negative. Mm-hmm. If your score is 0 to 100, your NEI is weighted towards the positive, which means that the affect, the way people feel, is generally, on average, more positive than it is negative. Right now, during the work from home pandemic era, maybe you can't read people's body language like you used to. Maybe you're not around them, but maybe you Slack with them instead, or you have a Zoom call every now and then to check in once a week. You can't just walk by them and see the stress, as they're slumped over their computer, or they just look unhappy on their face. You can't see this. So everybody is so isolated and so independent and not connected anymore that we really need to find some other way to just get our arms around how people are doing at scale, meaning at companies that, if you have 10,000 employees and you're the HR director, I mean, where are the problems? How would you even know? I mean, you'll know because somebody reports them. You get complaints. Mm-hmm. Somebody tells you, maybe a survey gives you information, but you don't really see anything in real time like this. So if you could compare the West Coast team to the East Coast team and see that the West Coast team's NEI is 30% higher and the East Coast team's NEI is low, like it's negative, that you should probably go to the East Coast team first and ask them what's going on with their workday and what's going on in their lives or with their managers. You know where to start. You know where to start peeling things apart to see where the toxicity is and try to keep it from spreading like a cancer, quite frankly.
The converse is also true in that if there's a team that's doing well, you can discover what it is that keeps them and makes them happy and replicate that throughout the rest of the culture too.
Yes, I think the ultimate goal would be to think about culture. Company culture is often described in terms of behaviors. We do this, we do that, we say this, we say that. These are our values. Really, culture also has a lot to do with emotion. And there's a lot of good research and literature out there that talks about emotional culture as everybody has one, even if it's a culture of suppression. It's almost similar to a brand. Every company has a brand. Even if the company is not defining it, your customers will. So emotions happen. They're uncontrollable. They're not really very manageable. And they're unpredictable. So what is it that you want to drive a culture of? Think of Southwest Airlines. Their whole culture is built around love. They have the heart as their logo.
Mm-hmm.
They allow their employees to express their own creativity. If you've ever been on a Southwest flight, they may sing the flight rules out rather than dictate them. They may crack jokes over the intercom, but what they're doing is they're encouraged to foster an emotional state of love. So that's how you, at the opposite end of the spectrum, instead of thinking about it in terms of avoiding a cancerous toxicity, the opposite end is really intentionally deciding our company is going to be about gratitude. Our company is going to be about hope. Our company is going to be about whatever, joy, or, pick an emotion. And then you can define behaviors and actions to support that emotion. And you can track how you're doing. Are you really getting most people to really feel that emotion, or is it just sort of floundering?
Support for this podcast comes from Mindful Happy. Your feelings matter, and Mindful Happy can prove it. Try it out for free right now. Grab your phone and text the emoji that best represents how you feel to 972-480-6715. See how your feelings compare with other listeners of the Feelings Matter podcast. Again, text the emoji to 972-480-6715. And now back to the conversation with Tina and Michelle.
Is there potential here to affect a company's bottom line with this type of information?
I believe so. Of course, this is new, and we do have data and use cases yet to collect. I know that right now, the Society of Human Resources Management is reporting, as of 2019, an average of, I think, $44 billion a year lost due to a toxic workplace alone. We're talking about the lower end of that spectrum.
Wait a second. Let's say that number again. That was with a billion with a B, was it not?
Billion. Think about anytime you've talked to somebody who recently quit their job. 9 times out of 10, you're like, why'd you quit your job? Like, oh my God, I just hated it. I couldn't stand to go in there every day. And they're just overwhelmed with all this negative emotion. Yes, it's a huge part of turnover. Turnover is a huge cost. Turnover and negative emotions spread. People who are manipulative and using negative emotions to further their own agendas are some of the worst perpetrators, quite frankly, and they have a big impact on the bottom line, $1 billion big.
My goodness. There are good reasons why a company would need an NEI. So how does that net emotional index actually help to improve workplace culture? How does knowing this number on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, take us through a few scenarios of how calculating the net emotional index can actually help a company improve their culture and start to stop some of that HR cost bleed?
I have a lot of theories here. I'm so glad you asked to expand on that. When you have to stop and receive a message from Mindful Happy, who's calculating NEI, when you receive a message from them and it says, hey, how are you feeling right now? Sharing is caring. Let me know how you feel. And you answer it, you've actually had your mind interrupted from whatever it was doing. And you had to stop and think about, well, how do I feel right now? And consider it. What that is emotional awareness. And emotional awareness is one of the most important skills in building emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is one of the most important skills in building strong leadership in teams. So just being aware of it will help people improve their awareness of their emotions and their feelings, which should have a good trickle up effect, if you will. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we talk about safety and psychological safety. A lot of times people who are marginalized, shall we call, demographic groups who don't feel safe at work, they often feel ignored, like nobody cares. The simple act of a company implementing something that asks them every day how they feel and sends them a link where they can look and see how everyone else in their group is feeling at the time anonymously, increases transparency, and it lets them know that the company, they maybe do care how you feel, because feelings matter. If a company is going to take on that hashtag feelings matter, then they're going to need to live it and walk the walk. If they say they're going to do something, they say they care about it, and then they follow up with these actions, and these actions are transparent and truly anonymous, I think it goes a long way to build trust and rapport with a business.
Not only is it emotional awareness, but there's also a degree of emotional regulation. It reminds me of our discussion that we've had a couple of times about the lizard brain, right? If you are in a moment where you're operating in your lizard brain and you're feeling stressed or whatever, having that minor little disruption, just enough of a pause to maybe get you back out of your lizard brain, that's actually also helpful, is it not?
It's very helpful. When you get hijacked, you're what's called an amygdala hijacked, and you're so irritated that you can't even think straight. It literally takes your brain 18 minutes to calm back down. So
wait, say that again. It takes how long?
18 minutes to calm yourself down. That's probably if you're really good and you've actually just walked away to recover yourself. You never know, because it's like time ceases to exist almost when you're hijacked. So the best way to speed that up and transition out of that state and back into a normal rational mind, that prefrontal cortex here that's doing all that thinking, is to acknowledge the emotion. So the practice of saying, you know what, right now, all I can give you is my head is exploding. Like, that's all I got. Head is exploding. Then right there, you just acknowledge that your head is exploding. And that alone will shorten that cycle and will allow the brain to start to recalibrate a little bit faster.
Okay, so you're telling me that not only are there business benefits to tracking the net emotional index for the company, happier workers, less turnover, the opportunity to correct toxicity within the culture, but the individual employees that are participating in this, they also benefit with better emotional awareness, an opportunity to check runaway emotions from time to time, that both the company and the individual employees are actually benefiting from this system. Yes?
It's a bit symbiotic, isn't it? Yes.
Amazing.
The last question here was, where can they go to calculate their NEI?
Right.
So let me tell you, right now, there's a fast way to do it, which is Mindful Appy, and it's technology. It's based around emotions. And if you were to wanting to calculate the NEI in the more traditional way of sampling emotions, you'd use a positive and negative affect scale. It is copyrighted material with the American Psychological Association. So you may need to go to an industrial organizational psychology firm that either has the rights to use that scale, or perhaps any other technology firm that can collect emotional sentiment. Now, with the NEI and the way it's calculated, Mindful Appy really encourages anonymity, that you can actually get some accurate emotional data, or it's more likely to be accurate, shall I say.
Okay.
But there is certainly a longhand way to do it. And it's like the Net Promoter Score. It's a simple formula. It's a weighted average. You could go figure it out and try it out. And there's also a shortcut. So it's pretty easy.
Excellent. Is there anything else about the Net Emotional Index that we missed covering? Is there something else that you feel like you need to call out?
I think the interesting thing to call out is volatility in emotions.
Okay.
So one of the things that I'm really interested in seeing as this rolls out and becomes more widely available and widely used is comparatively, how big are the swings from a day-to-day, a week-to-week, a quarter-to-quarter basis? Are there high highs and low lows? Is it a kind of a bipolar culture, if you will, or is it pretty steady and even keel? kind of always ship on the normal. So emotional volatility would be an interesting metric to look at. In addition, you could look at, there's psychology called the affective event theory in business, that different business events will trigger emotional states among employees. So it may be Christmas bonus time and everybody's super happy. It may be employee picnic and something terrible happened at the picnic and everybody is complaining about it the day after. You can see, well, maybe next year we'll try something different than a picnic, or maybe we'll actually go see what kind of event the company might like to have because the picnic just didn't turn out so well. So insights and information into the day-to-day choices that the business makes and how those choices affect feelings, and then the volatility and overall mood of those choices as well.
So you're telling me that the NEI can actually expose whether or not a company, even when you've got an organization that is very intentional, they're really trying to create an excellent corporate culture. They're trying the best that they can to make it a happy workplace, a healthy workplace, that having this set of data would actually expose the truth of whether or not the culture that they think they're cultivating is actually the culture that they're cultivating.
And it would do so a little bit faster than a follow-up survey 6 months later. Then people are required to rely on their memory, or just try to show that, check the box, yep, that worked. Okay, back to my work. It's interesting. I forgot half your question.
My question was, does this have the potential to help a company see where vision and reality are possibly not connecting?
Yes. So imagine if you're a company and you're in charge 35 regional departments and you're doing your best to do all of the things that are good for culture, the right bonuses, the right reward system, the right shout outs, the right activities, benefits. And yet you're not sure how well that's working. If you were to do a comparative NEI across all 35 of those groups, you could see numerically in rank order, given a certain point in time, which one is doing really well with that and which one is struggling.
The trend over time, so not just the snapshot, but the trend over time. Maybe one snapshot will make you feel like, oh yeah, we've got this all worked out. It's exactly what I thought it was. But when you start watching the trends over time, it goes back to what you were saying about volatility, that, oh, maybe this isn't exactly what I thought it was.
Things I'd be really concerned about if I was that manager were looking at scores that were below 100, that were negative. That would show me that is not so good, and I'd be really, really hyper-focused on what's going on. I'd also look at across time where there are particular peaks or particular troughs in that data, where one day was 20 or 30% higher than the average of all of the rest. What happened on that day? There's a lot of pulse surveys. There's a lot of things that you could follow up with easily and quickly and distribute to the team to get a bit more insight into what was causing that particular emotional reaction. And then management always can make decisions based on that information. And the more information that they have, I think, the better.
Excellent. So when it comes right down to it, people need to maybe start considering calculating an emotional index and maybe reach out to Mindful Appy to do it then, huh?
I think they should. It's the one number you need to know. It's the one number you need to track because feelings matter.
Fantastic. Tina Schweiger, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle, as usual. Can't wait to see you again next week.